Brett Gibbons from papercartridges.com, and today we're going to be shooting another historically significant and absolutely iconic rifle with historically correct paper cartridge ammunition. So this is a modern reproduction of the Whitworth rifle. In the early 1860s, this rifle stood at the intersection of the old and the new. It was designed by Sir Joseph Whitworth, who had an engineering background. He was not a gun maker, and he brought these new ideas into the development of this rifle with precision tolerances in its manufacturing. And of course, the famous hexagonally rifled barrel. It was capable of incredible accuracy, and this attracted the attention of the British Army, who saw military potential. At ranges over 600 yards, for instance, it made the pattern 1853 infield look like the old smoothbore Brown Bess in comparison. However, to maximize accuracy, the card and felt wads were rammed first until they rested gently on top of the uncompressed charge of black powder at the breech. Then the paper-patched bullet was rammed separately, but very gently, only resting on top of the powder and felt wads. Obviously, these luxuries were not going to be available in combat. For the Whitworth to be a practical military rifle, it needed ammunition that was simultaneously capable of great accuracy and also suited for the harsh conditions of the battlefield.
Shall we go again?
The problem was tackled by Colonel Edward Boxer, superintendent of the Royal Laboratory at Woolwich. His solution was a highly complex cartridge, easily the most complex and tedious black powder muzzle-loading paper cartridge that I have ever made. It superficially resembled the cartridge used for the ordinary pattern 1853 infield rifle musket, but with crucial differences. The lubricated wads at the base of the bullet were vulnerable to damage, so they were protected by a cover that was made up around the outside of the bullet and lubrication and was removed by the soldier before firing. There was another system known as the Whitworth patent cartridge, which contained the powder, bullet, grease, and wads all in the same tube. The tube was held over the muzzle, and a soldier pulled a tab that released a trap door, allowing the powder to fall down the barrel. Without removing the tube from the muzzle, the bullet and wads were rammed straight through the tube and down the barrel until seated. Colonel Boxer's Woolwich cartridge is loaded in essentially the same manner as a standard infield cartridge, which would have been familiar to any British soldier in 1864. Tearing open the cartridge, the powder was carefully poured down the barrel. After pouring the powder, the soldier would reverse the cartridge and pulled a tab made out of ribbon that ran through the seam of the protective case along the exterior of the bullet and the lubricated wads underneath it. Then, just like the standard infield cartridge, the bullet, with paper still around it, was inserted into the muzzle, and the powder cylinder snapped away in the fashion of the infield cartridge. Next, the bullet was rammed until it was resting gently on top of the grease wads above the powder. It was important to apply only enough pressure to seat the bullet so as to not compress the powder. Without interruption, the loading process with the Woolwich cartridge would have looked something like this. Oh, that is brutal. Ultimately, the British Army decided not to adopt the Whitworth rifle as the general issue weapon for the infantry, primarily because they couldn't make ammunition that shot as accurately from the rifle as separately loading. So the advantages of it were kind of moot if you couldn't give that inherent accuracy to soldiers. And the P-53 infield was, for battlefield purposes, good enough, out to 500-600 yards. So after several years of testing, the Royal Small Arms Factory made over 8,000 of them, and they decided ultimately not to adopt it.
Now, at the time that this was coming out, breech loaders were already in the works.
Yeah, they were on the way.
In the planning stages. So within 5 years of this coming out, we have the Snyder being adopted. Now, the Whitworth doesn't see service in the British Army generally, but it does become very popular in the volunteer movement.
Yes.
And that's a story for a different day, but the gentleman soldiers, the half rifle shooting club, half militia of the Victorian Rifle Volunteers.
It perfectly suited the type of shooting they were doing.
Because they were doing
super long
target
range,
shooting
precision
in
shooting.
England's green and pleasant land. So it saw use there. Saw use
Not
in
in the British Army, though. They weren't they decided to pass on it.
but perhaps.
Someone else might be interested in this rifle, though.
And if y'all ain't gonna use it, the South shall gladly take it off your hands.
A very small number of Whitworth rifles were purchased by the Confederate Army during the American Civil War. This is probably the most famous use of the Whitworth rifle, and it has become surrounded by legend and myth. Incredible feats of marksmanship have been attributed to Confederate sharpshooters and most of them are almost certainly apocryphal. A bullet from a Whitworth rifle probably did kill Major General John Sedgwick during the Battle of Spotsylvania on May 9th, 1864. Several officers on his staff noticed an unusual, distinctive whistling sound from the bullets that were passing around them. The fire was coming from long distance, well beyond the range of a typical rifle musket, but the Union soldiers of the 6th Corps were still ducking every time one of these whistling bullets flew over. General Sedgwick famously told his soldiers to stop ducking.
Why, my man, I'm ashamed of you, dodging that way. They couldn't hit an elephant from this distance.
Moments later, a strange whistling bullet hit General Sedgwick in the head. He was one of the highest-ranking officers of either side to be killed in the American Civil War. A few hours earlier, his chief of staff had urged him not to visit this particular section of the line.
Seriously, General, I beg of you not to go to that angle. Every officer who has shown himself there has been hit both yesterday and today.
This is a crucial piece of evidence. It means that the Confederate sharpshooters had accurately determined the range. So, Marty, do you think you'll be able to hit an elephant at this distance?
Well, I don't know. I sure hope I can.
Now, it's fair for him to use a bench rest for this shoot, and it's historically accurate because the day before General Sedgwick was killed, Confederate sharpshooters had occupied positions, and they had been shooting at Union officers at this specific spot on the line for like 24 hours by that time. So they had already picked good spots, and they would have built up logs or anything else that they needed to do to get a good, solid firing position. So this is absolutely within the spirit of those Confederate sharpshooters at Spotsylvania on May 9th, 1864. All right, let's shoot an elephant. Confederate sharpshooters preferred to use imported English cartridges, usually made by Elley Brothers. Whitworth rifles were so rare and so expensive that it made sense to supply them with the best quality ammunition available. These Whitworth patent cartridges held the bullet, lubrication, wads, and powder all in the same tube. So this is what Marty will use for the shoot. Pulling a tab at the base of the cartridge released the powder, and it fell down the barrel to the breech. The bullet and the wads were then rammed through the tube until they rested on top of the powder. Due to the outrageous cost of elephants these days, we elected to shoot at a steel target instead. It's about 20 inches wide and 3 feet tall, and is about 475 yards away from the shooting position.
So it's that one right there, right in the center, right?
Yep. And the windage is dead on.
Hey!
It is. Good shot.
Hey!
After making all the paper cartridges used in this video, I now realize why more Whitworth shooters do not use the original military-style cartridges. They are a pain in the rear to make. The bullets I use are made on a custom Corbin swage die. They fall out of the die exactly 0.442 inch in diameter and weigh 530 grains. Paper patched up, they're about 0.45 inches in diameter. The charge of 70 grains black powder is somewhat anemic by Whitworth target shooting standards, but it does the job. And many thanks to Marty for filling the role of our Confederate sharpshooter. No elephants were harmed during the making of this video.